Hello students, I welcome you all to the session 5 of the subject Computer Concepts and C Programming. In the previous session, we learnt about the design tool named flowcharts and you came to know how important flowchart is in modeling the problem. We worked out some examples as well in the previous session. In this session, we will look into the C programming, which is the core part of this subject. So students, before learning any programming language, it is very important for you to understand its history and who developed it and what are the fundamental core components of the programming language. So in this session, we are going to cover about the history of C program, what are the features of the C program, how do you write a C program, and we also discuss what are the common errors that you encounter while you are programming. Let's begin with the history of C programming. Which are the languages that influenced the C programming language? To begin with, in the year 1960, ALGOL, full form is algorithmic logic, was developed by a group of international programmers or scientists, and the group was led by Alan Perlis. So this was very prominent for the development of C language because it is a block structured programming language. After that, 1967, BCPL was developed and it inherits some of the features of ALGOL. It was developed by Martin Richard. BCPL full form is Basic Combined Programming Language. After BCPL, Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie collaborated and developed the next language, which they called it as B, which also influenced from BCPL as well as ALGOL. They named it as B. B doesn't have any full form just because it is the next version of the BCPL and they just kept the first letter of BCPL as the new programming language name. After this, Dennis Ritchie developed the very popular programming which we are going to now learn. We call it as the first version as traditional C, which inherits the features of B, features of BCPL and features of ALGOL. And students, for C also there is no full form since A, after that next alphabet is B, and then since A, B influence the C programming, so the next letter in the alphabet series is C. That's the reason Dennis Ritchie named it as C programming language. And then there was a collaboration between Brian Cunningham and Dennis Ritchie, and they came out with K&R C, which is called as Cunningham and Ritchie's C. And they also came out with a book on this C programming language, which is very popularly used by all the first level programmers. After this introduction of this collaborative language K&R C, it became so popular that everybody started using this language for developing various kinds of applications. And then problem arose. What was the problem? The C compiler, which was developed by Brian Cunningham and Dennis Ritchie, were used and modified by various companies or the developers to develop application. So this came into a different kind of problem called as platform independent problem. So whatever they were modifying in one machine, the same application were not able to run in another machine due to incompatibility compilers. So this became a big problem and there was a need for developing standards for the programming language. That's where the ANSI came into picture. ANSI stands for American National Standards Institution. So this American National Standards Institution set the standards for C during 1989, and this was the standardized version of language was called as ANSI C. After that, ISO came into picture. So in the 1990, ISO standardized this ANSI C version for global usage and they call it as ISO ANSI C. ISO full form is International Standards Organization. So up to here we have the certifications or the standardization. After that, whatever you are seeing over here, 1999 C99, 2011 C11, these are all updated versions of the C compiler. Okay, so this is all about the history of C programming language. So it's very easy for you to recollect. So very first ALGOL came into existence, and then BCPL, the basic combined programming language, was developed, and then Ken Thompson together with Dennis Ritchie came up with B programming language, and Dennis Ritchie developed C by using all these languages features, and it became very popular. Again, there was a collaboration between Cunningham and Ritchie, and they developed C programming language, which they call it as K, which is popularly called as K and R C. And once it became popular, there was a necessity for standards, because the compilers were different and modified by different programmers or scientists. So that's the reason American National Standards Institution came into picture to standardize this version of C language, and they called it as ANSI C. And then International Standards Organization approved the standardized version for global usage, and what you see over here, C99, C11 are all updated versions of the C program. Now we shall look into the features of C program, which makes you assured that why C is so popular. So the very first feature of C programming is C is a structured programming language. Students, I explained to you what do you mean by structured programming language in my first session, where we discussed about program development lifecycle. Structured programming is an approach where you model the problem in the form of top-down design approach. Programming language, which can also be called as modular programming language. So which means that it follows top-down design approach. The basic advantage of modular programming is if you divide the program into modules, it will be very easy to manage. The next important feature is C has the features of assembly level language and high level language. So C has got capability of both low level language and the high level language. So what do you mean by this? With this, you can develop both system software and application software. That's the reason C became very popular. You should be knowing the Unix operating system is also developed by C programming language. The next feature is C has a vast set of libraries or library function. C is shipped with a variety of built-in functions. So with these built-in functions, you can develop applications rapidly and quickly. And the next is C library can be extended. They have shipped a vast set of libraries, and you can extend the library. The next important is C is very easy to learn. Since C is a high level language wherein we are going to use English like language for programming, so using this we can develop application very easily. And the next I'm going to write over here, important feature is the platform independence. That is nothing but C is highly portable, which means when you develop an application using C programming language, you can execute that application on a Unix machine or a Windows machine. So it is highly portable in nature. With minor modifications, you can make the application execute or run. So these are the features of C programming language. Once again, I will just revise. C is a structured programming language, which means that it is a modular programming language. With the help of modular programming language, you can manage the problem easily as well as the code also easily, as well as you can debug also easily. And next, C has the features of both assembly level language and high level language, which makes it very suitable for developing system software and application software. And then C is shipped with a vast library, so you can develop application quickly or rapidly. And also C library can be extended, which means that you can write your own library and use it for your projects or applications. And the next most important feature is C is highly portable, which means that C program or application when developed can run on a Windows machine as well as a Unix machine. So students, these are the important features of C language, which makes it more popular among all the programmers. Now we shall look into the structure of C program. Students, I have to tell you one more thing. Whenever you want to learn any programming language, it's always good to begin with C programming language, because if you are very good at C programming language, switching between or learning any programming language will become very, very easy for you. So please concentrate and learn C programming language effectively, so that in future any programming language comes, you can learn and adapt and develop applications very easily. Now we shall see the structure of C programming language. Or you can just say structure of C program. See, whenever you write a letter, you have to write it with a proper format. So wherein you write the date, place, address, salutation, body, thanking you, etc. All there is a proper format you follow while preparing the letter. You cannot just write in however format you like. Similarly, whenever you want to write a C program, you have to follow a particular format, and this format is used by the compiler to compile it. So if you are modifying the format, then compiler will throw a lot of errors. Now we'll see how to write C program. So very first is called as, the block is called as the documentation section. See, this documentation section is used to write down the metadata information. Which means data about data. Here you are going to write down information like what is the name of the program, what input it takes, what output it gives, who developed it, on which date it was created, modified, etc. All this information you are going to write down in the documentation section. Students, in documentation section, whatever you write, you have to write in the form of comments. There are two types of comments: single line comments and multi-line comment. if you want to write a single line comment, then you have to use 2 forward slash followed by the comment which is in the form of text. If you want to write a multi-line comment, 1 forward slash followed by an asterisk. Here you are going to write multiple lines of comment and terminate with the asterisk and then a forward slash. For example, program to add, since I don't have some space over here, I will write it here itself. I will write it here. Example for single line comment. Program to add 2 numbers. Example for multi-line comment. Program add 2 numbers, date created, whatever date you want to mention, who developed it, all this information, and then like this you terminate. So students, what you need to understand is these are all textual in nature and these need not be converted into machine level format by the compiler because this is not an executable statements. Therefore, comments are ignored by the compilation process. You have to write down the note, comments are ignored in compilation process. So that means processor, when it sees these kind of symbols, it means that yes, these are all comments and I don't need to convert this into machine level instruction. So it will just skip all these things. Now we understood the first section of the C program. Now we'll see the next section. Inclusion section. When explaining to you the features of C program, I told you that C comes with a vast set of libraries. So if you want to use those library functions, then you have to include those header files. So this inclusion section is responsible or is the place where you include all the header files. And to include header files, and you have to use, for example, a hash symbol, include, and then followed by name of the header file. So in this we can say hash include, one example, stdio.h. So if you include stdio.h, which means standard input output, so then you can use built-in functions like printf, scanf to accept and display the data. So this is all about the stdio.h. One more example we shall take. Hash include math.h. If you include this, then you can use sine function, sqrt function, and all etc. and all the mathematical functions which are there in this. So you don't need to write any code for these things. Everything is there. You just include it and start using the built-in functions. So that is the place where where inclusion section is there to help you to include the header files. Now we shall see the next section. Definition section. Students, this section is responsible or is used to define symbolic constants. And also macros. Macros are small pieces of functions. So what is this symbolic constants? How do you define it? So you define again with the help of hash symbol and define, and then you write the symbol name, and then whatever you want pi value, this will be substituted, which means that wherever you are using pi capital 3.14 will be substituted. So if you want to define any symbolic constant, this is the place where you have to define. And students, you need to know that if you use hash, these are called as preprocessor directives. Even in the previous section, inclusion section, we used hash. Here also we are using hash. So whenever we are using hash and using this define or include, these are called as preprocessor directives, which means that before actually processing the entire program, these will be processed first. Before processing the program itself, the whatever is there in the inclusion section and definition system section has to be ready for compilation process. That's what the preprocessor directives are all about. Next section is the global declaration section. In this section, you are going to define or declare the variables, or specifically global variables and constants. So that means that whenever you are writing anything over here, this section will be available globally in the program. The next section is the main function section. This is the main core part of the C program. You have to keep it in mind that every C program should contain at least one main function section. This main function section contains two blocks, that is declaration and executable statements. Declaration is nothing but declaring of variables and constants. Here the statements, like for example, sum is equal to a plus b, where a and b and sum are all declared in the declaration section. So this main section is a block structure, which means that you have to use flower brackets, opening and closing flower brackets. Within that you write down all these things. So this main function is like this. Okay. Next we are going to see the user defined function section. Since C is a modular programming language or structured programming language, wherein you are going to break down a big problem into smaller subproblem, and all the smaller subproblem will be residing in the user defined function section. What is there over here? It does whatever you have written over here, the same thing it will be over here in the form of function 1. Multiple function will be written here, and function n, and each function will be having the declaration and set of executable statements. So you have to keep this in mind whenever you run your program or compile your program. The very first section that will be executed, or very first function that will be executed, is the main function. So it begins with the main function and terminates with the main function, and then inside the main function we are going to call or utilize the functions that is been defined in the user defined functions section. Okay, so with this we came to know the structure of C program. Now we shall take a simple example to compute area of a circle. We write a simple program to compute area of a circle. Now we have understood the structure of C program. We will follow the same structure and write the program. So very first is the documentation section. So I will just write the name of the program. So since I have already written the name, I will just erase this and put a comment over here. Okay. So this is a single line comment. And then I will just use the include section where I will include the stdio.h library or header file so that I will accept an input and display the output. Next, I will define pi as 3.14 since the formula contains pi is equal to, area is equal to pi r square. So I will not write 3.14 over there. Instead of that, I will define a symbolic constant and then use the symbols. Next, I will write the main function void main. Students, I will explain to you all this, what is this void and all in the future classes. For now, you just understand this is the way in which we write the function header. So this is called as the function header, and whatever is there within the brackets, curly bracket, is called as body of the function. Now inside the first opening curly bracket, after this we are going to declare the variables. So we will use float. Float is nothing but numbers with decimal points. So we have to declare a variable area and r. Then we'll use printf, enter the radius. /n is used to bring the cursor into the next line. Then scanf is a input function where we are going to accept the input, that is r, from the standard input device which is keyboard. So we have used printf to display the enter the radius information in the standard output device, that is the monitor, and we are going to accept the value of r from the standard input device. So then after this we are going to write the executable statement, that is nothing but the computation. So here area is equal to pi into r into r. So 2 times r square, and after this area will be having the result. We need to display the result. Again we use the printf function area of circle is equal to %f, and then write down the name of the variable and then terminate the function with the help of closing flower bracket. So students, what you need to understand is like how you terminate every statement of English using full stop. In C programming language, you terminate every statement with the help of a semicolon. This is how you write your C program. So there are some steps to be followed if you want to create the C program. Type the C program in the editor of your choice. It can be code blocks, it can be turbo C, or it can be dev C++. And then once you type, or after you type, invoke the compiler. There will be a specific button, or you have to click on that button, or you have to go navigate from the menu bar and invoke the compiler to compile the program. And once the compilation is over, then without any errors, then you can run the program by again invoking the run command. Okay, so this is how I execute the C program. So I hope you have understood. So this is the comment section, this is the inclusion section, this is the definition section. Not declaring any global variables here because there is only one block. There are no multiple blocks. If there are multiple blocks, then we'll go for global declaration. So here there is no need for global declaration. Directly we will have the main function. Inside the main function, as I explained to you, it contains two parts, declaration part and the executable statement parts. So here I declared all the variables or constants which is required for this program, and then I am going to use the input statement and output statement to accept the input, perform the computations, and then use the printf statement to display the results. I hope you have understood this part of the C program. Now we shall look into the last concepts of today's session, that is errors in program. So students, whenever you are working with programs, whenever you type a program, you encounter a set of errors. What are those errors? I am going to utilize this part of the board to explain to you the concepts of errors in programming. Whenever you are writing a program, suppose you miss out a semicolon. Suppose instead of float you do a mistake and just write flute. Then these kind of mistakes which is related to the syntax of the programming language is called as syntax errors. The errors which are reported because you are not following the regular governed syntax of the language, such kind of errors are called as syntax errors. These syntax errors are or can be reported or can be found out during the compilation process, because compiler knows that float is not the word it knows. It knows only the word float. So it will tell that on this line there is an error. Compiler knows that every C program statement has to be terminated by a semicolon. Here you have not terminated, so the compiler will show an error over here that there is a there is a statement which has not been terminated. So such kind of errors if you do is called as syntax error. The next error is called as runtime errors. Runtime errors, as the name only tells you, that this error arises when the program is in execution or in running state. So after you compile and bug free and then run the program, there will be a error, or if there is any error encountered, such kind of error is called as runtime error. Why this runtime error arises? This runtime error may arise because of various reasons which can be related to the technology of the computer, or it can be related to the logic part of the program also, or it can be related to any of the unknown sources. So for example, you are having out of memory, then such kind of error is reported in the runtime error. Suppose you do a division by 0, then such kind of error will not be detected in the compilation process. It will be catch hold in the runtime. So those are all runtime errors. The next error is called as logical errors. These are all errors which is made by the programmer while representing the actual statements, or what I can say is logic misinterpretation kind of errors are called as logical errors. Suppose you want to perform an addition operation, but by mistakenly you put a asterisk symbol. What result you have to get? Addition, but what you are getting? Multiplication. Such kind of errors are called as logical errors, which are done by the programmer by simple mistakes in representing the program logic or the business logic. And the last kind of error is called as linkage error or linker error. Linkage or linker error. As you can see, linking is nothing but this part of the C program. So if any error arises during the linkage of the header files to the current program, then such kind of errors are called as linkage error. So in stdio.h, there might be some problem. So that problem will arise during the linkage process. So that kind of errors what we see during linkage, we call it as linkage of header files, we call it as linker error. So students, whenever you are doing programming, you will come across such kind of errors, and you need to debug all these errors to make your program error free as well as bug free. Then only whatever applications you develop, that will be usable by end users. So with this, we'll conclude this session. So in this session, we looked into the brief history of C program, which are the programming languages that influenced C, who are the people who developed, who put their heart and soul to develop a very popular programming language called C. And we came to know why C is so popular by listing out the features which are very important, and we came to know what is the structure of C program, how you have to write the C program, and then we also looked into different types of errors. Coming to the exam point of view, there will be definite questions for features of C, structure of C program. You can mark 5-star rating for both, and you can mark 2-star rating for errors in program, wherein some 2 marks question will be asked. What do you mean by syntax error? What do you mean by runtime error? Like that. So students, we'll conclude this session. I hope you had a very good learning in this session, and this is very important because if you miss this first session, then it will be difficult for you to follow the next session, because every session is based on the structure of C program. If you haven't understood the structure of C program, it is difficult for you to understand the future sessions. Okay, thank you. Happy learning.